Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sugar Maple Solar Virtual Community Meeting. My name is Neely Kelly. I am based in Rochester, New York, and am a moderator for this evening, and we are grateful that you've taken the time to join us and learn more about this solar project. Next slide, please. A few housekeeping items. The meeting will last approximately 1 hour. Please submit any questions you have in the Zoom Q&A, the green arrow at the bottom of the slide. You should see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If for some reason you cannot access the Q&A feature, please submit questions via email to sugarmaplesolar@aes.com. We will be monitoring this email throughout the meeting. We also have a live transcript feature to view subtitles. Blue arrow at the bottom of the slide. We are recording this meeting and it will be made available on the project website along with the presentation slides and a transcript of the Q&A. Next slide, please. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to introduce AES to the community, present project information and updates, provide information on the New York State 94C permitting process, inform the community about next steps in project development and how you can get involved, and fulfill the public engagement component of 94C. Due to the persisting COVID crisis, AES is unable to hold an in-person community meeting for the safety of our team and the local community. We do look forward to engaging with you in person when it is safe to do so. Next slide, please. Here are your panelists and presenters for the evening. And now I will turn it over to Mike Farrell. Mike?
All right, can everyone hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, cool. Nice to virtually meet everyone. We hopefully will be able to meet in person soon. But for now, we'll do it here. You mentioned the Q&A function. Introduce myself. I lead the development for AES in New York for our larger projects such as under 94C or larger standalone battery projects. I think each person will give a little bit of background on them as they present their sections. Previously, I was with it's called Legacy S-Power. I joined back in September of 19, and we're really excited about the growth and opportunities of this project and everything else that AES is doing in New York. Next slide, please. An agenda for today's virtual community meeting. We'll talk a little bit about AES. This project has changed hand a couple times, so try to clear that up a little bit about the project overview, the New York State regulatory, and then other community interest and study updates, and then also the Q&A session. Next slide, please. Okay, so AES Corporation, we work in a group of AES called AES Clean Energy. Earlier this year, S-Power merged with AES Corporation to form this AES Clean Energy group. Previously, S-Power was owned half by AES and half by Alberta Investment Management Corporation, which is a Canadian pension company. The merger now we're all part of AES. You will know that this project was originally developed by Geronimo. Geronimo was acquired by National Grid. National Grid changed the name to National Grid Renewables, and then S-Power acquired this project from National Grid Renewables. That's quite a few acronyms, and definitely ask us questions for clarification if that's not clear. We know that's been bopping around. The important thing is that the team, Eric and Brett, who you'll see on this call, hear from on this call, were the original developers of this project with Geronimo and National Grid, and they've joined the AES team. So we're lucky they've joined the team, and we've got continuity on the development. It also means that the development of this project is not impacted timeline-wise as a result of the merger or the acquisition of the project. Next slide, please. AES is a publicly listed multinational power company. It is one of the only international power company that is actually headquartered in the United States. It's got a lot of different divisions, a lot of people. I mentioned AES Clean Energy has about 500 people. You can see AES globally has over 8,000. The mission of the company, we accelerate the future of energy together. And we're very interested in pursuing, both solutions to climate change and bringing more renewable energy into the United States. Next slide, please. AES Clean Energy, which is a kind of a group within the broader AES group, you'll see the operating portfolio and some stats. Those symbols stand for solar, then wind, and then battery storage. Significant portfolio of each of those, and we're looking at solutions across the United States. Obviously, this group and this team is mainly focused in New York. Got a little over 160 megawatts of operating solar projects, a significant development portfolio, which includes the Sugar Maple project. And we're very excited about what we're trying to do in New York. We're obviously long-term owners and operators, and we want to be providing economic benefits into the project itself and also into the state itself, particularly in the COVID environment, where we want to be a significant part of the recovery of the state, economic recovery, and obviously help the state meet its clean energy requirements. Next slide, please. All right, I'll hand it over to Brett, and he can talk you through the project overview.
Great, thanks, Mike. Yeah, as he said, this is Brett Hastings, and I was also lucky enough to working on the Sugar Maple Solar project, as well as several other projects that are going to continue to be developed by AES in New York. I've been involved with building renewable energy projects for over 15 years, and actually live in a wind park in Bliss, New York, in Western New York. I've been working specifically on Sugar Maple for over 2 years now, and I'm happy to say that we're all very lucky to have the ability to work with a company like AES, most notably because AES is motivated not only to develop and design projects, but also to follow through and build and operate, which is a process that I'm more supportive because it requires more of a community commitment outreach approach, and it helps with the building of long-term relationships within the community. So, and we recognize too that not everyone is excited for us to be here as we are, and like I said, we completely understand that, and that's one of the reasons that we're here tonight, is to help you all understand that AES is committed to making sure we answer your questions, make as many people feel as possible, feel comfortable that Sugar Maple project will be a beneficial project not only for the environment, which is the main reason we're here, but also for the community here in Wilna and Krogan, where the conditions are very favorable for a project like this. Let's see, you want to go to the next slide, please? We'll go over the project overview. Perfect. So, the nameplate capacity, this is a 125 megawatt PV solar project. 125 megawatts means that at one instant in time, when the sun's out and we're producing 100%, we can put 125 megawatts of power onto the grid. Also, I mentioned up here that there's 20 megawatts of battery storage. We're also considering that, and we'll decide on this prior to submitting our application in the summer, but I do want to talk briefly about the addition of that energy storage to this project. Research and development in the renewable industry has increased, and it's becoming more and more apparent that storage is going to be a major component of these types of projects moving forward. And as we all know, renewable resources are intermittent by nature. And that said, filling the gaps between cycles of wind and sun have become the stability. The world's working to decrease the use of CO2 emitting electricity generators like peaker plants and other electricity generation plants. And as a result, we have to fill these gaps. It's difficult to list all the reasons we based our storage decision on, but I'll list a few. One of the most important being AES has made a huge commitment to storage and has a team that focuses specifically on it. We're extremely confident that storage can be a very safe and essential piece of this project and other projects, but especially considering the goals that we're reaching for under the climate action plans in New York and across the country. So a 20 megawatt unit will take up approximately an acre of space right next to the substation. And of course, it'll be installed in compliance with all local, state, federal regulations and also the fire codes and NEC codes. But economically and electrically, it's way more efficient to have many distributed energy storage units attached to the grid rather than just one, say, one peaker plant. It has more instantaneous startup, and it's quite a bit more efficient to build as compared to the other plants. And of course, we'll have a 24/7 monitoring system of the units and automatic control of the output should there be any issues. And as we'll be doing with the solar project, we'll also be working directly with local EMS and fire departments with regard to, safety plans and emergency response plans. So that's a little bit of a discussion on the battery storage edition, which is different from our presentation last year. The project's actually located right on the border of Wilna and Croghan, or the counties of Jefferson and Lewis County. The POI, or what we call, excuse me, the point of interconnect, is a national grid line that runs right through the middle of the project. We're qualified and entered into the 2021 class year facility study. And that study takes about a year or so, and basically it helps all the grid projects to understand each other's impacts and scopes, and allows for an efficient and safe integration of these types of projects. This could reduce CO2 emissions by 162,000 metric tons a year, which is similar to powering 20,000 homes, over 20,000 homes. COD date is called the commercial operations date, and you'll see that once in a while throughout the presentation. And we're working to be COD by December 2023. If you could run to the next slide, please. I'll just touch briefly on a project timeline, just so everybody understands what we're looking at. As I mentioned earlier, we're early in the process right now, and just trying to reach out and explain what we've been doing, what we're going to be doing, and how long this is going to take to actually come to fruition and how we're going to do it. Right now, we're in the development phase, and we've been in that phase since early 2019. This is where we assess the land and the availability of it next to a transmission line that might have the capacity, and the laws and the communities that might be interested in working with us on a project like this. So that's one of the things that is done during the development phase. One of the other things is the environmental studies. Now, Haley's going to touch on all of the studies that we've been through, that we're implementing right now, and what we'll be performing, moving forward for the life of the project. It's important to note that these studies aren't always just, one and done. We'll be continuing to assess and monitor our impacts to the environment in an attempt to, ensure we can continue to improve it. So also, we hire, very, very experienced consultants to do this, like TRC, who Haley works for, and Young Summer, to ensure we get quality, unbiased information. And these guys have had to manage the line between customers like us and the agencies and DEC and Corps of Engineers and landowners and stakeholders for many years and over many projects. And we're happy to have the opportunity to partner with them and work through them. One of the other things that we're going through now too is engineering and design. And during this process, some of you may have seen some of our folks out in the field drilling down, a couple of feet underground to understand and assess the subsurface soil, to understand what we're going to be doing for foundations. Those are all just temporary holes to understand what we're dealing with. Putting in some posts, some piles, and doing some tests based on where those things are being put in the fields. So you'll see a little bit of that going on. We plan to submit our application in the summer of 2021. So that's coming up, but not tomorrow. So we still have quite a bit of work to do. And then estimated construction is towards the end of 2022. We say Q4, which is Q4, or October, November, December, that time frame. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking to end construction and begin operating our project in 2023. So if you want to go to the next page, this will show our layout. So this is a pretty large area project. It's hard to really focus and dial in, very close to this, but the folks that are involved in the project understand who they are. And just to give a little bit more specific information, the vicinity of the roads around the project will help to try to understand where we're at. Route 126 along the west and the river, Old State Road across the south, excuse me, Brannigan Road on the east, and then Strickland Road kind of cuts through the middle, as well as a Rape Road that heads north on the sort of northeast side of the project. We're bordered by some New York State lands as well on the east. As I mentioned earlier, the transmission line runs right through the middle of the project, so connecting the substation and the energy storage unit can be located away from roads and residences to reduce visual impacts and help stay in compliance with sound-related regulations. Vegetation in the area is mostly ag and reverting ag lands, along with some brush and emerging forests. We'll be calculating more closely what the impacts are going to be on prime agricultural lands. We'll have that as a part of our exhibits within our permit application. In this project, we've tried to work very closely with some of the farms in the area to try to reduce the impact to some of these prime ag lands. And we've negotiated with some landowners to help them get some better land, and we're utilizing some of the land that isn't quite as agriculturally friendly in an effort to try to help that out. So also, we're proactively working with the local snowmobile clubs as well. The Missing Link Snowmobile Club is in the area, and we're going to work with them to mitigate any interruptions to the trail system. If we want to go to the next page, I'll talk briefly about some economic benefits. So when you build a project of this magnitude, we're talking about $190 million approximately in capital investment. That results in quite a large chunk of estimated tax revenue. We're estimating approximately $11.5 million over the first just 20 years of our operation. And that revenue will be spread across the counties of Jefferson and Lewis, the towns of Croghan and Wilna, as well as the local school districts. The nice part about some of this is we don't require any sewer connections. We plow our own roads. We don't, send any kids to school, and we handle our own electrical connections as well. So we don't require any additional services, and we will certainly be increasing, the taxable value that will be that's normal for those parcels that we're operating on. Also, pursuant to the 94C regs, there's going to be some, a host community benefit. When we were working with Geronimo, they had approximately a $25,000, host community charitable fund. We don't have all the details worked out with the AES as how we're going to handle that host community agreement. However, it will be larger than the $25K that a year that was pledged originally from Geronimo. We'll handle that a little bit differently by working with the communities to figure out what works best with them. One of the other examples too is there's a $500 per megawatt per year electric utility bill credit. So essentially what that is it's $625,000 of electricity credits that'll be distributed over 10 years to all the residential electric utility customers in the towns of Wilna and Croghan. So it's a really nice distribution. Also, during construction, there's going to be 200 to 250 jobs created, and at any time there could be, between 100 and 150 people working in the area at one time. That means that spending at local hotels and restaurants and diners and coffee shops, hardware stores, is going to increase quite a bit for the short term for, at least the first season and potentially into the second construction season as well. So along with the increased local spending, some of the tax revenue, we'll also be looking at approximately 2 to 3 full-time equivalent jobs that will become available in the area to support these projects. So with that, I think what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Eric Will, and he's going to take it from here.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, everybody. As you could tell, we're in the same room. I'm Eric Will. I live in the Syracuse area, but I'm over in Western New York working on a project over here. So we're doing this together for a change. I've been involved with this project since its beginning over 2 years ago. I'm sorry, you could flip to the next slide if you would, please. Thanks. And I have to say, Sugar Maple Solar's transition to AES ownership has been a really seamless one for us and hopefully for the landowners and stakeholders as well. I've observed that the community-oriented culture that Brett and I came from, which we think is really, really important, it has not changed at all from company to company. AES is really, really committed to, being a good neighbor, and we're going to be fully engaged with Jefferson and Lewis counties and the towns of Wilna and Croghan for many, many years to come. We will always welcome opportunities to interact with property owners, schools, public officials, community organizations, and we'll try and always be receptive to things like sponsorship and partnership opportunities, and even things like site tours and presentations. We really believe that a utility scale solar installation can be viewed as a community asset that can be used really effectively to promote clean energy awareness and education. Our public involvement program plan that we filed under Article 10 will continue to be our roadmap for public engagement. That plan in 2020 resulted in a lot of stakeholder interactions. Unfortunately, not many were in-person meetings, but I'm happy to say that's finally begun to change. Recently, it's been great to meet a number of you in person, and I just think that makes a huge difference. The last point on this slide emphasizes our desire to be especially supportive of economic development and environmental initiatives, plus STEM education. AES is the first renewable energy company in the United States to, to join the likes of Microsoft, Mowing, Procter & Gamble in Discovery Education's STEM Careers Coalition. We're committed to engaging in these kinds of programs that help connect kids to STEM careers and offer professional development to their teachers as well. Next slide, please. Sorry. A year ago, when the project was still owned by National Grid Renewables, we held our first virtual community meeting. So tonight is actually our second. Over the last couple of years, we've held many meetings actually with area landowners, both those participating in the project as well as those who aren't. And in addition, we've had communications certainly with town board members and county officials, including both county IDAs. We've had quite a few opportunities to discuss the project with other community stakeholders that you can see on this slide. As Brett mentioned a moment ago, I had a good conversation recently with the Missing Link Snowmobile Club, and they know how interested we are in preserving their ability to ride through the area. We've joined the Greater Watertown North Country Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Lewis County and Carthage area Chambers of Commerce. And the hope is that these kinds of affiliations will help us really, get to know the communities better and get integrated into them. Also, as Brett mentioned earlier, we're going to be engaging with local fire departments and first responders to develop training and emergency response plans. In the spirit of trying to interact with as many organizations as possible, the project information was shared actually some time ago with both the Adirondack North Country Association and the Development Authority of the North Country. Finally, we do want to use local construction labor to the greatest extent we possibly can and pay prevailing wages. So we've had ongoing conversations actually with the likes of IBEW and Watertown, the New York State Laborers Organizing Fund, and as well as the Regional Council of Carpenters. And in all cases, I got to tell you, I'm impressed with the commitment that they've made to training their members in all of the phases of constructing a solar generation installation. Lastly, I would mention Fort Drum. Early on, we shared the preliminary project plan with the folks over there, and they didn't see any impact whatsoever to their operations. And there are other organizations and agencies that we certainly will be engaging with. So this kind of interaction will definitely be an ongoing process. Finally, you know, we really want to encourage folks to make community engagement a two-way street. We welcome your input and hope you'll never hesitate to reach out to us. You'll notice on this slide, I'm sorry, can you go to the next slide, please? I missed that. You'll notice on this slide, there are a lot of ways that you can do that. We have a dedicated toll-free number for New York. The project has an email address and a website. And believe it or not, real people you can actually talk to who hold virtual office hours twice a week at the toll-free number. And when we get to the last slide of this presentation, you'll see my email address and my personal cell phone number. I want to be available anytime to anybody who's got questions or concerns. And if I'm not available when you call, I promise you, you'll get a call back pretty quickly. So that said, I would like to turn the program over to Jim Moscato. Jim is our lead permitting counsel with the Young Summer Law Firm in Albany. He's been doing this work here in New York on renewable energy projects for a very long time, and he's going to give you an overview of the New York State regulatory process. Jim?
Great. Thank you, Eric. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. Good evening, everyone. As Eric said, my name is Jim Moscato. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Young Summer in Albany, and I did grow up in central New York. I'm permitting counsel for the Sugar Maple Solar Project and assisting the project through the permitting process. I've been involved in permitting and development for renewable energy projects for about 20 years now. Tonight, I'm here to talk with you about the new state permitting process known as Section 94C. And through my career, it seems like the permitting has changed quite a bit for renewable energy projects, although a lot of things have stayed the same in terms of the comprehensive environmental impact review. Whether it was under seeker in local zoning or through Article 10, as we're going to talk here tonight, and Haley's going to touch on some of this in a little bit more detail later. Section 94C is a comprehensive renewable energy permitting program to look at potential environmental impacts. The Sugar Maple project is known as a major renewable energy project, and as such, the state law requires it go through this 94C process and obtain permission from the state to construct and operate. And that permission comes from the newly established Office of Renewable Energy Siting, or what you'll hear to me referred to as ORES. When the project began development, the process was under the Public Service Law under Article 10. However, recognizing the need to reform the permitting process under Article 10, which existed for about 10 years for renewable energy projects specifically, as compared with traditional energy generation projects, and recognizing the similarities of the potential impacts associated with those projects and the similar classes of projects that were being reviewed by the Siting Board under Article 10, the state legislature enacted 94C. Section 94C allows projects that were previously proceeding under Article 10 to elect into the 94C process, as has been done here. And both Article 10 and 94C replace what I referred to before as the State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQR. And that was the comprehensive assessment of potential environmental impacts. Haley Effler is going to talk in more detail about the studies and information that's prepared as part of the application. But what I'd like to do is go over the process under 94C, go over where we started under Article 10, and look at some of the specific substantive requirements in the pre-application phase on local laws. So under Article 10, Sugar Maple commenced with the filing of a PIP in March of 2020. That was updated in May of 2020, and it's going to be updated again here in the near future. The PIP outlined the steps and procedures that AES would follow in informing the public about the project and identifying stakeholders. And then over the course of the 7 to 8 months that followed, and the transitions that Mike mentioned earlier, AES has now been continuing the development of the project conducting the studies, including those specific studies in the project area, and working on finalizing the design. The Article 10 application would have been the culmination of that effort, but now that information will be included in the 94C application. And as Brett said, that's anticipated to be this summer. Can we go to the next slide? So as I mentioned, Sugar Maple Solar has elected to proceed in the new permitting process created for renewable energy projects and under 94C. Again, the 94C is a siting permit that's issued by the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, ORES, which is within the New York State Department of State. Permitting decisions are made by the executive director or his or her designee. Regulations to provide additional details on the process were issued for public comment last year. They went through a hearing process, having 7 virtual meetings. They had intended to be in person, but had to switch to virtual because of the pandemic. But nevertheless, a comment period was held open through December. And the final regulations and the uniform standards and conditions were finally adopted just last month on March 3rd. The hallmark of the 94C process is the uniform standards and conditions, which I just mentioned. And again, picking up on the similarity of the project impacts for solar projects or the project impacts if it were a wind project, the uniform standards and conditions identify the common mitigation measures or siting restrictions and standards that were implemented as part of the Article 10 process. And they have now adopted those as part of the state permitting process. And they establish essentially the rules of the game up front, allowing the developers to design projects in conformance with the standards, and also to allow communities to understand what the standards will be as they are introduced to the projects. In addition, for projects where there's unique or different circumstances or potential impacts which may require site-specific conditions, SSCs, as they're known, can be requested or adopted by ORES in the draft permit. So the standards reflect extensive work that was done in Article 10 proceedings and hearings, including extensive testimony, cross-examination, and briefings that have been reviewed by the state to date and represent stringent sound, setbacks, and other requirements that must be met by the project. In addition, the USCs require a number of pre-construction compliance findings, plans, and other details to be filled in or to be filed in order to ensure construction, if approved, will proceed safely. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the 94C process. You'll see the red box, that's the "you are here" indicator, if you will, where we are in the permitting process right now. As you saw highlighted on the last slide, part of the process involves pre-application consultation, which we are currently engaged in with the state agencies, local agencies, and community members as required by Section 94C. These consultations have been ongoing and will continue until we file the application in this phase of the process. The next box on the slide is the application submission, which in this case we anticipate filing in the summer of 2021. Intervenor funding applications would then next be due 30 days after the application is filed. And there are a number of notification procedures to ensure that the community and host municipalities are aware that the application has been filed. Following a 60-day review to determine if the application meets the regulatory requirements, the application is either deficient and will require a supplement, or it's deemed complete and ORES proceeds to the next step, which is allowing it 60 days to issue a draft permit, or otherwise indicating that ORES may deny the permit. Once ORES issues the draft permit or makes a decision with respect to a permit it may deny, it will announce a public comment process, public comment period, which has to be a minimum of 60 days. And that will provide the public and the host municipality time to submit public comments, issue statements, a municipal statement of compliance, and comments on the project. Following submission of the comments, ORES will determine whether a hearing is necessary, which depends on whether substantive or significant issues are raised in the comments. ORES must make a decision on the permit within 12 months from the date it is determined to be complete. Following a decision on the permit, the is required to make what are known as compliance filings, which include final design plans and other plans prior to commencing construction. And there's an opportunity at that stage for additional review and approval of those plans. And then construction is commenced and potentially in this project, if approved, would be towards the end of 2022. Next slide, please. In making a decision whether to grant the siting permit, similar to under Article 10, ORES must consider local laws. And unless the local laws are set aside and waived as unreasonably burdensome, ORES's permit will require the applicant to comply with the applicable local laws. Again, similar to Article 10, in considering whether local laws are unreasonably burdensome, ORES must consider the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act targets for the development of renewable energy and the environmental benefits of the project. Municipalities have a number of roles in the process. In addition to the pre-application consultation on local laws and other issues, the municipality can also submit a statement of compliance with local laws following the issuance of the draft permit, whereby the municipality can provide ORES its view as to whether or not there are local laws the host municipality seeks to enforce and whether the project is designed in conformance with applicable substantive standards of local laws. To assist municipalities in their review of projects, like Article 10, there is a $1,000 per megawatt local agency fund fee that is paid for by the applicant that municipalities can use for attorneys and consultants to assist them and guide them in the process. Municipalities are entitled to 75% of the fund, which for this project would total $125,000. That fund is also available for community members and parties that indicate an interest in participating in the proceeding as a formal party and can meet the requirements for community intervenor funding. Intervenor fund requests must be applied for within 30 days of the filing of the application, which for this project is likely to be in the August-September timeframe. But again, there'll be plenty of notification 60 days before the application goes in, as well as 3 days before the application goes in, letting you know that the application has been or is anticipated to be filed. Finally, as Brett mentioned, 94C does require a host community benefit, and that is an aspect of that the AES is certainly interested in talking with the host municipalities in more details regarding. Next slide. So again, 94C is very comprehensive. This is a list of the application exhibits that are required under the 94C regulations and law. Many of these topics are typically covered in environmental permitting, and many of these topics are also addressed in local laws, and even 94C even goes beyond topics that are addressed in local laws, and it is very comprehensive. Next slide. This slide talks about site restoration and decommissioning. As a commitment under the 94C process, the developer will submit as part of the application a decommissioning plan, which will set forth the parameters for decommissioning of the project at the end of its useful life. It will also identify financial security that will be put in place and be accessible to the towns to ensure that in the unlikely event that the developer isn't able to carry it forward with the site restoration and decommissioning requirements, that there is money set aside, which will be reevaluated over a period of years to ensure that in the future, money is available to the towns to decommission the project. All of the details associated with the decommissioning will be included as part of the application, and that will be available for review as part of the process. Next slide, please. This slide touches on local laws. As I mentioned, one of the items to be discussed with the towns during the pre-application review process is compliance with local laws. Solar and energy storage are permitted uses in both the towns. The town of Wilna has relatively recently enacted zoning provisions addressing large-scale solar, and includes details listed on this slide, including setbacks, decommissioning requirements, sound, and other items. We're working to ensure where it's possible for the solar project to be designed to comply with these existing applicable local laws. that the design is reflected in doing so. There are a few instances where we need to look more closely at the requirements. For example, there's a 50-foot setback for participating parcel lot lines in the town of Wilna, where some additional clarification will be helpful, as well as some screening provisions where, again, clarification and working with the locals in terms of the intent of those provisions will enable us to have the design of the facility conform with those provisions. We also understand that the town of Croghan has a zoning code in place. That zoning code has provisions which relate to solar, and that there may be updates with respect to that code coming in the near future. Next slide, please. So lastly, for my segment tonight, this is an overview of the local agency funds that I mentioned earlier. When the application is filed, additional funds will be made available, and the application submission details are listed at the bottom of this slide. There's no need to scribble this down here tonight. This information is available on ORES's website, the Office of Renewable Energy, ores.ny.us. This information will also be on the project website and will be made available following the presentation. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Haley to provide an overview of the extensive studies and evaluations that go into the permitting application for the project. Haley?
Hey, thank you, Jim. This is just loading for me. I don't know what happened. Gotta love technology. Thank you all for dialing in. My name is Haley Effler. I am the TRC Environmental Permitting Project Manager for the Sugar Maple Solar Project. Next slide, please. As you can see from the slide, and as Jim has mentioned earlier, I'm going to touch upon some of the studies and analyses that are required to complete the 94C permitting process and, to complete the application. Some of these field studies have already been initiated and completed, but there will be more field work occurring throughout the year. As you can see, we're on the wetlands and water bodies slide. I'll just touch on some of this information here. During the 2020 field season, we completed the wetland and stream delineations within the project area. Kind of to summarize it, we found 46 wetlands and 12 streams within the project area. Upon completion of the wetland delineation report, we submitted that report to ORES for review, and we also completed a site visit with ORES's consultant to verify wetland boundaries. As stated below, our goal for this project is to avoid and minimize impacts to these important resources. The next slide shows a map of delineated resources within the project area. So next slide, please. So as you can see, this was our project, our preliminary layout here. So I just wanted to show you this slide showing the delineated features within the project. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to touch upon rare, threatened, and endangered species, or RTE species. I'll start with breeding bird surveys and winter raptor surveys. So in addition to these wetland and stream delineations, you probably have seen our field staff in the early summer hours or late evening winter hours conducting breeding bird surveys or winter raptor surveys at the project area. We completed the breeding bird surveys between May and July 2020 in accordance with the New York State DEC protocol issued for these surveys. In addition, TRC completed winter raptor surveys of the project during the 2019 and 2020 winter field season. Next slide, please. So next I'm going to talk about visual resources and landscaping. We will be completing viewshed analyses for the Sugar Maple Solar Project, which will include photo simulations demonstrating what the project will look like in the landscape, which will also include photo simulations demonstrating, quite a few of the varieties here. If we could just move through the slides, I just want to show one quick. So here's, then we'll go back in a second. So I just wanted to show you the Viewpoint Selection Map. So all of these points are photo selections where we're kind of, where we've taken photos and we'll use those to analyze the project. As you can see, they're all throughout the project. And that gives us a really great variety of areas to analyze. You can go back now, please. Thank you. So both the viewshed analyses and photo simulations will be included in the visual impact assessment, which will be included in the 94C application. This will also include a glare analysis. In addition to visual analyses, TRC will complete a landscaping plan for the project to support visual screening and mitigation. Generally speaking, we try to utilize a mix of coniferous, evergreen species and deciduous species so that you can get a nice natural view in the landscape, but also get year-round screening. Next slide, please, maybe double next. So I wanted to show you some representative viewpoints of the project. I just showed you that map of where viewpoints were. Here's one of those points kind of up close. So we take photos from this location and we'll use these for the photo simulations at this location and amongst all the others within that map. Next slide, thank you. Moving on to noise analyses or sound studies, solar farm noise impacts are studied as a part of the permitting process. However, noise created by solar projects is generally quite minimal. The inverters can only be heard when you're standing very close to them. So this is demonstrated on the next slide, if you wouldn't mind flipping there. So here's kind of a representative sound levels bar chart, so to speak. I find this to be very interesting. So a library at, how quiet libraries are, is typically 35 decibels, and a soft whisper from someone about 3 feet away from you is just a little bit over 40 decibels. A solar facility limit at someone's property level is just above a soft whisper at 3 feet. So it's really quite a quiet project. It does not emit a lot of noise. I realize this does not cover all of the analyses that we've been conducting at this project. However, I'm more than happy to discuss further analyses during the Q&A period if you have any questions for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much, Haley. Now we are going into the Q&A portion of the meeting. We have 15 questions so far, and we will do our best to answer each of them. The first one is, what about the large number of geese that use these fields during the fall and the spring?
Yeah, thanks, Neely. I'll take that question. That's a great question. So migratory birds will still be able to utilize these fields where panels are not placed. In addition, there will be significant spaces between the panels. It's not just a wall of panels where there's no spaces in between. They're fairly contiguous, but they're not all in the exact same area. So there will be spaces between the areas of installed panels that geese can continue to utilize in the migratory season. The project will not block areas completely for their use.
Thank you very much. Next question. How close will these panels be located to my property line?
Neely, that's a great question. I'll also take that one. Thank you. We'll follow the 250-foot setback from residence lines as applied by the 94C permitting process. However, as I discussed, we will also be implementing a landscaping plan to reduce visual impacts from these projects, so that there's visual screening provided.
Okay, thanks, Haley. Next question. What is the drilling being done in the fields around my home this week?
It's a good question. I'll grab that one, Neely. So in an effort to understand what the subsurface soil conditions are, to best understand how we're going to put our foundations in. When I say foundations, I mean drive our piles. The racking systems for these solar panels are essentially like I-beams that get driven down into the ground, and to understand how far down under the ground they need to be driven, whether it's 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet or more. We do some soil borings, and we also drive some piles in and do some pile load testing, where the piles are actually moved left and right and forward and back and up and down, and then eventually pulled out. So what's going on now is temporary, but the reason behind it is just to understand what the subsurface soil conditions are.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Next question. What will be done to assist me when the value of my property drops because my home will be surrounded by solar panels?
So at this point, the understanding that we have in the industry from studies that have been done in other states, we don't really have any large projects like this built in New York State, but industry studies that have been done down in North Carolina and a few other states show that the value does not increase or decrease property values within these project areas. So we can probably dig up some of those studies for you to help you understand the basis behind that, if that'll help. I don't know if anybody else has any other input.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Next question. You stated you have met with landowners. When do you plan to meet with those landowners who live within this project to listen and address our concerns? There was a meeting scheduled last year and then canceled by your company, and we have heard nothing since that time.
Yeah, it's a good question. So COVID's been sort of tricky as far as some of those meetings go, which a good point to make right now. Eric and I, luckily, we've been able to get our COVID vaccines. We're proud of that situation. So we're in a situation where we're COVID free and able to actually sort of coexist in an office together. But as far as meeting with landowners, as Eric mentioned, we're extremely above board and very accessible. There's a few landowners that have asked a few questions that we're absolutely going to reach out to specifically already. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us as well through Sugar Maple Solar at aes.com or via our website or the 1-800 number or even the cell phone numbers that we'll have at the end. You'll find that we're going to be extremely accessible. You know, at the same time, we recognize that there's many differing opinions out there regarding solar and other renewable energies, and we respect that, and we recognize that we might not be able to change those opinions, but we'll commit to listening to every situation and try to come to the best solution available for each individual situation. So hopefully that answers that, and you're feeling reach out to us. Feel comfortable doing so.
Thank you, Brett. Next question. Hi, is there a slide with all of this regulatory information?
I think the next one, I think that might have been asked right before the regulatory slide came.
Okay.
So I think we're covered.
Okay, and I guess to just reiterate, like if there is regulatory information that's not available in the slides that you were looking for, please reach out and let us know. Let's see, will this power be received by the local community or will it be distributed out of the area like the Tug Hill windmills?
This is a great question. And this kind of sits down to an electricity, 101 theory answer. So the electricity is going to be gathered DC throughout the whole project area. It will be converted to AC. Our interconnection will put that electricity, all of those electrons on the grid at that point of interconnection. Those electrons will go down that pipeline or those electric lines, and it will go to the next substation up and down from where we put our electricity, inject our electricity into the grid. And at that point, that electricity will be dispersed throughout the communities in the area. Electricity follows the path of least resistance. So, if the demand for that electricity is less than what we're producing, that electricity will continue on down the line and go to the next folks that have demand for it. So the electrons will be used up by folks in the vicinity of where our project is. Yes.
Thank you, Brett. I also wanted to mention, we did not realize until about 10 minutes into the presentation that the closed captioning was turned off. So our apologies to anyone who was looking for that and couldn't find it. Again, we will be posting this presentation online on the project website by next week. Next question. What is the plan for maintaining the area? What is the plan for removal or cleanup of the solar panels and facilities if once the program contract is up, eliminated or retired?
A couple of questions in there. I'll start from the top. What is the plan for maintaining the area? Our O&M team will be maintaining the area. There's a vegetation maintenance plan that will be in place. The grasses between the panels will be mowed. We're looking to be planting pollinator-friendly seed mixes along the edges of the panels. We'll also have a vegetative buffers where necessary throughout the project that will also potentially be maintained depending on what type of tree or vegetation it is. There's consideration for having sheep or for lawnmowers. So we're looking into all these alternative opportunities for maintaining the area. As far as removal and cleanup of the solar panels and the facilities, once the contract is up, the company will be responsible to take all the equipment out of the ground and take the panels down, and the panels will be either reused somewhere else depending on the life cycle, or they will be decommissioned and recycled via the manufacturers. If for some reason, it's a question that comes up quite often, I might be able to cut off. If for some reason, the project were to go default, we have a decommissioning financial security in place that is enough so that the local municipality can hire a project manager and have the whole place decommissioned and put back into agricultural or whatever type of production it was prior. So I think I hit all those questions.
What is O&M?
Good question. That happens a lot. We throw all these acronyms out. O&M is operations and maintenance. So that's our team. Once we go COD, or commercial operations date, once we're operating, the operations and maintenance team, 2 or 3 folks that will be working in the area, plus mowing teams, repair teams, things like that will be operating and maintaining the project. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So just a quick, we're almost at an hour and we have 14 questions left. We are planning to stay on and answer the questions that have come in. If anyone is free to drop off, again, the responses to the Q&A will be posted on the website. But just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we will continue to answer these questions as they come in. So next question is, how will this program be voted in to effect for the area? How will the local population in the immediate areas affected by the construction and the aesthetic impact of this program be consulted?
Jim, do you want to take the first half of that one?
Sure. I think if I can perhaps answer the question, hopefully this is what this was getting at. The project is approved by the State Office of Renewable Energy Siting. So that's the entity that will grant the permit. So in order for the project to go forward, ORES, that state agency, has to approve the permit, and they'll be making that decision.
Great. Yeah, thanks. I think to answer the second part of the question, how will these folks be, how will the local population be consulted? At any time, you can feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. I think, yeah, and we'll be meeting with Eric and I will be meeting with anybody in the project area that has further questions from today.
Yeah, I want to just add, I think that obviously meetings like this and the ongoing engagement with stakeholders is obviously how we get feedback from the local community. Jim mentioned that ORES is the permitting body. However, we're not just relying on the state permitting body to sort of just say things are okay. We want to make sure that we're engaging the community and stakeholders in discussing the project. So we look forward to for future engagement and ongoing engagement via meetings like this.
Thank you all. Next question. Will an FAA recommended glare hazard analysis be completed? This report would help identify any potential glint and glare impacts on pilots flying to and from both Wheeler-Sac Army Airfield and related training flights in the area, as well as flights to and from the Watertown International Airport.
Hi, that's also a great question. We will be completing a glare hazard analysis as a part of the 94C application and consulting with airports as required or as needed for this project.
Yeah, actually, Eric's already reached out to a lot of the airports in the area and spoke with these folks as well.
Okay. Next question. What research has been completed or will be put into effect to analyze and assess the depreciation of our property values that will absolutely ensue due to this project?
So at this point, we don't have any research plans post-production, but you know, I'm sure that'll be very good information for the industry, and we'd be happy to participate in that afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Next question, slide 30. The towns are responsible for decommissioning the old stuff come the end of life, but use the set aside monies from the plan. It would be local responsibility to do the work and dispose of the old equipment?
So, you know, it won't be, it would be
Only
the local municipality to hire a, you know, project management or a decommissioning company.
Yeah, I think Brett, I think what it's getting at is we're initially responsible. It only comes to the towns if we fail in our responsibility, but we've provided financial security. I think that's what that question is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kind of getting at. So it's
Yeah,
us. It's us first, and then there's security there if we happen to fail in our obligations.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Regarding the recent 94C reform, did this recent change impact the timeline of this project? Additionally, regarding decommissioning details, are they available to the public?
So Neely, I can take a shot at that. With respect to the first part and the 94C process changing the schedule for the project, no, I don't believe that that's the case. The schedule has been as it's been, and the 94C process has very similar timeline in terms of once the application is deemed complete, the length of time it takes to have the permit ultimately issued or a decision made on the permit. With respect to the decommissioning details, yes, that information is being analyzed, dictated by design and other things. And the information will be available as part of the application. All of the details that I spoke about during the portion of the presentation about financial security, the amount of decommissioning, the process by which components are decommissioned, what components are decommissioned, all of those details will be included in the application.
Thank you, Jim. Next question. Will you be mowing or planting pollinator plants within the area fenced in?
That's another great question. We have not yet assessed our landscaping plan at this time, so that's not a question I can answer right now. I apologize.
How are the old panels disposed of? Are they recycled or taken to the landfill at end of life?
At this point, you know, if panels are cracked or broken, they're taken back to the manufacturers to be recycled. You know, end of life for a solar project could be 25, 30, 35 years from now. It's tough to answer that question as to what will the situation be at that point, but based on the market for recyclables, we're assuming by then we're going to have a great market for recycling.
There are e-waste centers.
Thank you very much. What if our house sets on a hill and trees would have to be 40 feet tall to block the glare? I think that's getting at like site mitigation and viewshed.
Right, right. I guess we should probably maybe talk. Haley, did you want to talk about glare, the minimum glare?
Yeah, sure. So, as mentioned as a part of this, we will be conducting a glare analysis for the project. Generally, solar panels do not provide much glare. They have a very anti-reflective coating, which helps them absorb light better. As I just mentioned, we don't have a full landscaping plan yet for this project. However, we will be implementing landscaping where appropriate for this project based on the setting and, based on our viewshed analyses.
All right. Yep. And these panels are set up to absorb solar energy rather than reflect it.
What are the major changes in the project from what was presented last year before AES took over?
We talked a little bit about adding the battery storage. This is something that's being evaluated right now and hasn't been 100% decided on, but we will have that decision made prior to the submission of our application, as we'll have to have that engineered, and we'll have to consult with local fire and EMS. That's really the only major change since AES took over, other than the fact that AES took over, which isn't great.
Well, that's a good lead into the next question. Can you expand on the details of the battery storage, type of batteries, maintenance, environmental concerns, potential hazards, similar battery storage used in nearby projects? Thank you.
Mike, do you want to touch on the batteries?
Yeah, sure. I think it's important to note that just what the footprint of the batteries will be and sort of where they'll be located. I think that just to give some context. The batteries will be located in all in one location that is sort of adjacent to the project substation. Put another way, it'll sort of look like and be treated like, obviously electrical equipment, and will be protected as such, and with all the relevant setbacks. So it's much like a project substation that you would see anywhere electrical infrastructure. It will be treated as such. The other point to point out, we are still determining, it will be lithium ion batteries, as we can say. We don't know the exact sort of brand of those, but that's the type of batteries we'll be using. AES has a partnership with a company called Fluence, which is the largest battery installer in the world. And I only mention that because we are very well aware of monitoring safety concerns with both vendors and operations of batteries. And we'll be monitoring and making sure that those safety concerns are addressed, obviously throughout construction and operation of the battery project. I'm not aware of similar battery projects that are used in nearby projects. But generally lithium ion batteries are, where batteries are being installed now in New York, they're generally lithium ion batteries.
Thanks, Mike. Next question. Can those of us registered get a copy of this recorded meeting? So the recording of this meeting will be made available, we're hoping early next week, and you are free to use it as you see fit. And let's see, what date will you know what lands are being used in the project?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll take that, Millie. That's I couldn't tell you an exact date right now, but we're very close to finalizing our layout. We need to take all of the environmental and construction information, subsoil information. We need to pull that all together and make the best decision for where we're locating all of our equipment. That will all absolutely be done before we submit our application. So once we submit our application, at that point, you'll know, exactly what our layout is, and that will be available in the application itself, which we're targeting for summer.
Okay, thank you, Brett. And the next question, will the project include stationary panels or the design that generally tracks the path of the sun? Yeah,
so because the topography in this area is fairly flat. It works perfectly for tracking units. So essentially we will have single axis trackers that will slowly move with the sun on a north-south axis. So it'll move from the east to the west as the sun moves through the sky.
Okay, that concludes all our questions for the evening. If no one has any more, we'll call it an evening and try to, again, have these posted as soon as possible. They will probably not be posted as soon as the webinar recording. The recording and the slides will be posted early next week.
Hey, Neely, did the slide with Eric's cell phone email, did that come up?
There it is. Thank you very much, Brett. There you go.
Yeah, no problem. That just wanted to make sure everybody understands we're here to listen to them, and just wanted to, prove that. So, and if anybody comes up with any questions once this is over, feel free to reach out to us, send an email. We'll follow up on that. As Neely said, we're going to be putting all the answers to the questions that we discussed today up on the website as well.
All right. Well, without any further ado, I think we have completed this virtual community meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, taking time out of your evenings for this, and we look forward to following up with you and seeing you in the future. Have a good night.
Very much.
Great. Thank you.